The backpack hit the floor and the hallway turned quiet enough to hear the scrape. Jason Miller kept his head high, but his heart felt like a fist was squeezing it. His palms were damp around the frayed strap, and the eyes around him were not kind. Curiosity mixed with contempt. Whispers rose like gnats in summer heat. "The farmer's boy," someone sneered. "Wrong school." Principal Carter stood at the end of the corridor with his hands folded behind his back, his tie straight, his jaw straighter. The man had a way of turning air cold. "Jason Miller," he called. "My office." Inside, the office smelled of lemon polish and power. Framed diplomas lined the wall like trophies. A silver pen lay perfectly centered on the desk. Carter sat and did not ask Jason to sit. "Do you know why you're here?" he asked, voice low, calculated. "No, sir," Jason said, steady but small. "I have done nothing wrong." Carter's eyes swept Jason's shoes, the faded secondhand sneakers his mom had patched last month, then the worn elbows of his jacket, then the deep brown of his skin. "Westbridge Academy," Carter said, "is for families of standing. Your presence is a distraction, your background is a complication, and your attitude," he paused, letting the moment sting, "is not a fit for our culture." Jason felt heat crawl up his neck, but he stood straighter. "A school should judge a student by his work and character, not his wallet or skin," he said, the words simple, the truth heavy. Carter pressed a paper forward. "Effective immediately," he said. "You are expelled." The word hit harder than the backpack had. It echoed in Jason's ribs, in the space behind his eyes. He did not cry, he would not, but his hands shook. A guard appeared at the door without being called. Another followed. Both men wore matching smirks like uniforms. They walked him out through the lobby, where rows of eyes slay. Set at him, laughs nicked at his dignity. Mason Reynolds, the wealthiest boy in school, leaned in the doorway with a lazy smile. "Guess the charity tour is over," he said. "Westbridge is cleaned up." Outside, the day was bright and disrespectful. The sun did not care about broken things. Jason carried his backpack down the steps like a flag he refused to drop. The city bus wheezed, and he rode in silence, his reflection in the window a blur of courage and fear. Home was a one-story farmhouse on the edge of town where the pavement gave up and dirt remembered its own name. His mother, Ruth, was washing jars in the sink, stacks of empty shelves waiting for this year's harvest. His father, Eli, sat at the table mending a tractor belt, hands rough, eyes gentle. They looked up together, and Jason's jaw trembled for the first time. He put the letter on the table. He did not speak. The paper spoke enough. Ruth laid a hand over his. "You are not what they said," she whispered. "You are what you do." Eli's voice was gravel and hope. "They control a door," he said. "Not the road. We build roads." Jason exhaled, a shaking breath that emptied some of the shame and made room for anger to become fuel. "I'll fight this," he said. "And even if I can't go back, I won't bend." His parents nodded, not the nod of people pretending to be strong, but the nod of people who have already survived many winters and know spring by scent. That night, Jason opened his textbooks anyway. He had no school but still had dreams. He underlined and wrote notes and taught himself the lessons the system had tried to keep from him. His room glowed with a small lamp, and outside the window, the fields breathed in the dark. Somewhere beyond the fields, a rotor blade would soon cut the morning sky, and Westbridge Academy would learn the sound of consequences. Morning pulled itself over the farm with a bee. Lushal, dew on the grass, roosters voting for the sun, Ruth brewed coffee. Eli checked weather on his old radio. The belt he'd mended turned quietly on the tractor, steady as a promise. Jason loaded crates before breakfast because work had a way of stitching torn dignity. He lifted, stacked, tied down. Every knot a sentence that said, "I belong." "We'll talk to the board," Ruth said, sliding a plate to him, "and the district, and anybody with ears." "I'll go with you," Eli added, not to start a fight, but to finish one. Jason nodded, then his phone buzzed with messages that smelled like smoke, memes, slurs, screenshots of his face from the hallway. The worst ones came with no names attached. The best one was from Maya, his classmate from chemistry. They had studied together late one night when the lab assignment chewed up smarter kids and choked, and Jason had smiled and solved. "I'm with you," Maya wrote. "This is wrong. I'm talking to Miss Reyes." Ms. Reyes was the guidance counselor who kept a small bowl of sour candy on her desk and a bigger bowl of backbone behind her eyes. She called just after. "Jason," she said, "I heard, come in this afternoon, bring your parents. I've seen too much to let this pass." When they reached school, the summer sky had sharpened into something hard. The gates were open, but hearts were not. Students stared like they were watching a movie where the villain returned for one last scene. Mrs. Reyes met them outside, short, calm, a storm in a suit. She shook Eli's hand, hugged Ruth, and squeezed Jason's shoulder. "You don't deserve this," she said, "and he doesn't deserve that office." They entered a meeting room with a long table that made people feel small on purpose. Principal Carter sat at the head, the board president beside him, two members on either side, a lawyer at the far end with a pen that clicked like a metronome of intimidation. Carter smiled the way people smile when they think their teeth are law. "Mrs. and Mr. Miller," he said, "we are here to ensure standards. Your son has been, disruptive." Ruth folded her hands. "The only thing my son disrupts is ignorance," she said softly. Eli placed a folder on the table. Inside were copies of Jason's grades, science fair ribbons, letters from teachers praising his lab work and tutoring other kids, photos from community harvests he organized. "He's not asking for charity," Eli said. "He's asking for fairness." The lawyer clicked the pen. "Admissions policy," he said. "Cultural fit." Ms. Reyes leaned forward. "You mean bias," she replied. "His grades are top 3 in the class. His conduct is spotless. The only fit he fails is the stereotype you keep in your drawer." Carter's smile thinned. "This is not about race," he said, the phrase too practiced to be true. "It is about maintaining Westbridge excellence." "Excellence that fears excellence doesn't deserve the name," Ms. Reyes said. The board president cleared her throat, a signal for decorum. "We'll review and respond," she said. "You'll hear from us in a week." "A week of what?" Ruth asked. "A week of our boy's future on hold." No one answered. The meeting evaporated into the air like expensive perfume, all scent, no nourishment. On the steps outside, a cluster of students watched, Mason among them, phone raised like a weapon. "Back again?" he smirked. "Couldn't stay away from real floors." Maya stepped between them, not much taller than her courage. "Take your camera somewhere else," she said. "This isn't your show." Mason laughed. "Everything here is my show." "Not for long," a new voice said, smooth, carrying, surprising. It came from above, but there was no one on the balcony, not yet. Then, far away at first, a sound like air being ripped open, a deep whoop, whoop that grew larger than gossip. Students shaded their eyes. Teachers stumbled out into the yard. Car alarms chirped from the vibration. Jason felt the ground hum under his shoes and his breath caught in his chest as a helicopter swept over the sports field and circled. Slow as a warning, it was black and sleek and did not belong to any school he knew. It descended with the calm arrogance of someone who has absolutely nothing to prove. The wind kicked up, hair flew, paper scattered. Mason's phone nearly left his hand and Principal Carter rushed forward as if he had just remembered a rule about helipads and authority. The door opened. A boot touched the grass, then a hand. Then a man in a dark suit stepped down like a chapter turning. No one knew his name yet, but they already understood one thing. This man did not come to ask. He came to decide. The rotor wash flattened the field, the grass bowing like a congregation. The man in the suit walked with unhurried certainty, not an ounce of hurry in him, the kind of pace only people with power can afford. Another figure followed. An assistant in shirt sleeves with a tablet, a clipboard, and a face that said, "Don't waste my oxygen." Principal Carter smoothed his tie and stepped forward, eyes bright with a welcome he reserved for donors and cameras. "Sir," he called. "Welcome to Westbridge Academy. I'm Principal Carter. May I?" The man didn't look at him. He was scanning the crowd, measuring the moment, weighing the harm. Then he saw Jason, and his expression softened by 1 degree, the difference between steel and silk. "Jason Miller," he said, voice clear enough to silence side talk. "I owe your father an apology for being late." A ripple moved through the students, a wave of confusion chasing a wave of curiosity. Eli stepped forward, blinking against the wind, hat in hand, because habit is hard to argue with. "You don't owe me," Eli began. "I do," the man said. "We closed our deal last night. I should have come sooner." Carter blinked, eyebrows jumping. "Deal," he repeated, tasting the word like it might be sweet. Ah, you must be Gabriel Knox, the man said, finally glancing at C. Carter, Knox Ventures, Knox Foundation, Westbridge class of '98. He turned back to Jason. I've heard about you. It's a bad habit of mine to investigate schools before I fund them. It's a good habit of mine to show up when people forget their purpose. Mason's smirk slid right off his face, an audible thing, the sound of pride missing a step. Emma from the music program whispered, "That Knox to no one and everyone, the one who built clean water systems in 3 countries, the one who paid for scholarships without putting his name on the wall, the one who funded a rural tech incubator because he said genius grows in any soil if you stop stepping on it." Carter's smile was back, wider now. "Mr. Knox, we're honored. If you'd like a tour?" "Later," Knox said gently, which is a very firm way to say no. "First, a question. Is it true the school expelled a top student for cultural fit?" Carter opened his mouth, but the assistant lifted a tablet and read, "Student, Jason Miller, GPA 3.96, tutoring hours 62. This term, science fair winner, disciplinary record, none, family income, below district median, scholarship application, delayed by administrative error." He tilted the screen so Carter could recognize his own signature. "Expulsion, immediate, rationale, fit." Silence pulled tighter. Not even the helicopter dared to be loud anymore. Carter tried to steady his voice. "Mr. Knox, excellence requires standards." "Excellence requires open doors," Knox replied. "Standards are for the work, not the worth." Knox turned to the crowd. "I came to create a rural scholars program with Westbridge to honor the schools like this that changed my life," he said. "But a school that fears talent from a farm isn't worthy of what we planned." His words fell like rain on tin, loud, undeniable. "However," he added, "a school can change." He faced Jason. "I can enroll you at our Parton academy across town this afternoon," he said. "Full scholarship, laptop, travel stipend, mentorship. You'll start tomorrow if you like." Jason's throat closed. Gratitude. Too big for words. He glanced at his parents. Ruth nodded with wet eyes. Eli's jaw worked, trying not to break into relief. Knox then turned back to Carter. "Or," he said, "Westbridge can correct its error right now in front of its students, and we proceed with funding on one condition." Carter swallowed. "Condition. A public apology to Jason and his family, policy reforms, transparent financial aid process, and a board-level equity committee chaired by Mrs. Reyes," Knox said, as if he had rehearsed it on the flight, which he probably had. "Also, a full scholarship for Jason, retroactive, and protection against retaliation for anyone who spoke up." Mason scoffed, voice high with panic. "You can't just change the rules because a farmer showed up with a billionaire." Knox looked at him with a softness that wasn't kind. "Young man," he said, "we're not changing the rules, we're enforcing the real ones. Talent is the rule, integrity is the rule, respect is the rule." The board president had arrived during the commotion, hair a little wind-tossed, eyes sharp enough to cut through old habits. She stepped forward. "Mr. Knox," she said, "we are grateful for your interest." "Don't be," he answered. "Be accountable. Gratitude is a feeling. Accountability is a choice." The president turned to Carter. "Principal," she said. "Recommendation." Carter looked smaller now, like his suit had grown. He adjusted his collar, searched for dignity in a pocket where it had never lived. "We can review," he began. "Not we can," Knox said. "We will, and we will start in the next 10 minutes. The crowd felt it. A hinge in time. A point where a story either repeats or rewrites. Jason stood very still, like a tree learning it is not alone in the field, like a boy discovering the sound of someone else's certainty standing up beside his own. 10 minutes, the board president agreed. "Audito. Riem," she announced. "Students and staff gather now." And just like that, a school that thought it was a fortress became a stage where truth would climb the microphone and sing. Auditoriums remember everything. The cheer of victories, the hush of grief, the scrape of chairs that marked every new beginning. Westbridge's auditorium filled fast. The rumor mill dumped its harvest on every seat. Teachers lined the aisles. Students clustered in tribes. Phones streamed to people who weren't there but suddenly were. Jason sat between his parents, Maya on his other side, Mrs. Reyes near the stage with a stack of papers and a spine that would not bend. Principal Carter stood behind the podium, the board on folding chairs to his left. Gabriel Knox and his assistant to the right, quiet, patient, as if they had all the years in the world but had chosen today. The board president spoke first. "We are here because we made a mistake," she said, the word mistake sounding new and expensive in her mouth. "We will correct it in full view of the people we serve." Carter stepped up, hands on the sides of the podium, knuckles pale. "Jason Miller," he began, the microphone turning his voice into something bigger than he felt. "Westbridge Academy rescinds your expulsion." He hesitated, as if swallowing glass. "We apologize to you and your family for actions that were unfair and inconsistent with our mission. It was not beautiful, but it was public, and that mattered." Ruth squeezed Eli's hand so hard he almost winced. Jason stared at the stage like it would float away if he blinked. Carter continued, reading from a sheet as if the apology were a foreign language. "Effective immediately, you are reinstated with a full scholarship. The board will adopt transparent policies for financial aid and admissions, and we will establish an equity committee chaired by Mrs. Isabel Reyes." Applause craze. Checked open in pockets, real, hesitant, then growing. Because students know the difference between a performance and a pivot, Ms. Reyes took the mic. "Thank you," she said. "Now the real work starts. Some of you laughed yesterday. Some of you posted cruel things. Some of you stayed silent. I'm not here to shame you. I'm here to invite you." She looked directly at Mason. "To be better is a choice you can make before the bell rings." Mason shifted in his seat, discomfort, a new uniform he didn't enjoy. The crowd's eyes moved away from him only when Knox stepped forward. "I was once a kid in this room," Knox said. "Not this exact room, but a room like it. I learned that excellence is not a neighborhood. It is a practice." "You want the truth?" he asked. "I didn't helicopter in because I love drama. I came because cowards love paperwork, and paperwork never saved a single dream." Laughter broke the tension, the warm kind. "Here's what happens next," Knox continued. "The Knox Foundation will fund the Westbridge Rural Scholars Program, computers, fees, tutoring, transportation, paid internships, with priority to students from farming, service, and low-income families. We'll add ethics and equity training for staff, and we'll sponsor a community lab on this very campus." A cheer surged, the type that makes walls remember. "And Jason," Knox said, turning to him, "you'll have a mentor from my team starting today, not because you need saving, but because you deserve support." Jason stood, not because anyone told him to, but because some moments ask you to meet them on your feet. His voice trembled once, then found ground. "I accept," he said. "But I want one more thing." A hush, curiosity leaning forward. "Tutoring space after school," he said. "For anyone who needs help. No labels, no fees. We'll call it the farm table because on our farm, everyone eats." Cheers again. Bigger, fuller. The idea so simple it felt like truth. Mrs. Reyes nodded fiercely. "Done," she said. "We'll convert the old art room this week." And then the camera of the day turned. Ed to Mason, because stories like this demand consequences where harm wore a grin. Mason stood slowly, looked at his shoes, then at Jason, and for the first time his voice carried no swagger. "I was wrong," he said, each word sanded of pride. "I thought money made me more. It just made me louder. I'm sorry." Was it perfect? No. Was it public? Yes. And public matters because shame grows in corners and shrinks in light. Some students rolled their eyes, others nodded. Life is a mix of cynicism and hope. Jason gave a single nod back, not letting Mason off the hook, but offering him a rope. And somewhere behind all the noise, the janitor wiped a hand over a smudge on the back wall and smiled. Because he had seen 1,000 assemblies and not many worth remembering, reform is not a speech. It is a schedule. In the days that followed, paperwork turned into practice. The equity committee met in the library with coffee that tasted like determination. Mrs. Reyes chaired with a whiteboard full of verbs. Audit, publish, train, protect, she wrote. Repeat. The committee included teachers who had grown tired of whispering, parents who knew the price of closed doors, and students who wanted to be proud of their school without lying to themselves. Knox's team moved like engineers of change. Laptops arrived in stacks. A small army of mentors trained in listening showed up with notebooks and humility. The old art room transformed. Tables sanded, lamps installed, a pot of tea humming in the corner. A sign hand-painted by Maya read, "The farm table. Bring hunger. Leave full." Jason split his time between classes and the farm table. He tutored freshmen who hated algebra, juniors who feared essays, and seniors who pretended not to need help but stayed 15 minutes after anyway. He showed them how to break problems into bite-sized pieces and swallow fear with effort. He learned to ask for help too, because resilience without community is just exhaustion with better branding. Principal Carter tried to walk softly in hallways that remembered his heaviness. The board president began a formal review of his conduct, not as revenge, but as responsibility. Flagship donors wrote careful emails that said, "We value inclusion," in bold fonts, and the local paper ran a front-page headline, "School confronts bias. Student leads by example." It wasn't perfect. It was motion. One afternoon, as Jason was cleaning whiteboard markers from his fingers, Mason hovered by the door. "Hey," Mason said, voice small. "Do you help with chemistry?" Jason held out a chair. "Sit," he said. No smile, no sneer, just a chair. They worked through covalent bonds like two people taking turns with a shovel. Not friends, not enemies, simply students moving dirt from here to there. Later, out by the bike rack, Mason spoke without looking at him. "My dad told me never to apologize," he said. "Says it makes you weak." "My dad taught me to repair things," Jason answered. "Says it makes you strong." Mason nodded, a single honest motion. "Can I help here sometimes?" he asked, gesturing at the farm table. "Bring snacks," Jason said, "and don't talk down to people." "I can do snacks," Mason said. "The other thing will take practice." "That's why we call it practice," Jason replied. News of the program spread. Kids from other schools drifted in after the bell because word travels faster than buses. A girl from a nearby community college asked to volunteer. A retired engineer offered Saturday math circles. A local baker dropped off day-old muffins and wrote, "For the table," on the box in looping handwriting. One evening, Eli parked the tractor early and stood in the doorway of the farm table, cap in hand, watching his son explain a physics problem with hands that had lifted crates and now lifted mines. Ruth slipped an arm through Eli's, eyes bright. "I told you," she whispered. "We build roads." And in a quiet office, the board concluded its review. A letter play. See it on Principal Carter's desk, the kind of letter that closes one chapter so another can begin. He read it alone. The office lemons no longer sweet. The silver pen no longer centered. The letter offered retirement with dignity or removal without it. For once, he chose the kinder path. He signed not because he agreed, but because the school he had shaped no longer fit him, and because a man who stared down a helicopter had reminded him that some doors are meant to open both ways. The announcement went out the next morning. The auditorium remained still this time. Changes are quieter than scandals, but they last longer. Graduation season smells like flowers and possibility. The field outside Westbridge shimmered with rows of chairs and parents fanning themselves with programs. The new principal, Mrs. Reyes, interim no more, stood at the podium and grinned like a person who had wrestled a storm and kept her umbrella. "We are not perfect," she said, "but we are honest." Applause rose, honest too. Gabriel Knox sat in the third row. No helicopter this time. He'd arrived in a dusty pickup he borrowed from Eli because symbolism is best when it's not trying too hard. Maya waved from the valedictorian row. Mason adjusted his cap and nudged a freshman to stop fidgeting. The farm table banner hung from a tent nearby, smudged with fingerprints of learning. Jason stepped onto the stage when his name was called. The sound of his parents cheering louder than any crowd should allow. He shook Mrs. Reyes's hand and took his diploma, the paper light in his fingers, the meaning heavy in his chest. Then he stopped at the podium, because some stories ask for one more sentence. "To the students who feel out of place," he said, voice strong, "you are not guests here. You are the reason here exists. To the people who stood up, thank you. To the ones who sat down and listened, thank you. To those how harmed, do better, and come build with us." A standing ovation isn't a miracle. It's a decision a room makes together, and this room decided, after the ceremony. The farm table hosted a long line of kids and families for lemonade and muffins and college advice. A little kid tugged Jason's gown. "Are you really from a farm?" he asked. "Yes," Jason smiled, "and this place is one too." "A farm," the kid echoed. "We grow futures," Jason said. "No fences." Knox clapped Jason on the shoulder. "You're coming to our summer program," he said. "Then to the university we discussed. Full ride. You earned every inch." Eli stood nearby, eyes suspiciously shiny. I told him to keep his boots, he said, half joke, half pride. Boots are welcome in our labs, Knox replied. They remind people what real ground feels like. Mason approached with a crate of pastries from the bakery. No cameras, no performance. For the table, he said, echoing the note that started a ritual. For the table, Jason replied. They shared a look that held a whole course called learning. As the sun leaned west, a familiar thrum rolled over the field, heads tilted, smiles spread. Jason laughed. Again, he said. The helicopter circled once and set down lightly, not to intimidate but to inspire. A group of middle schoolers spilled out with teachers, eyes huge, hands waving. The banner on the side read, Knox Foundation, Summer Explorers. They would spend a week building wind turbines and coding water sensors and asking the kind of questions that keep adults honest. They would eat at the farm table and leave sticky fingerprints of curiosity on every surface. And they would go home knowing that a school is either a gate or a garden and that Westbridge had chosen. That evening, Eli and Ruth sat on the farmhouse steps, the sky bruised purple with a kind of beauty that hurts in a good way. Jason leaned against the post, bare feet on warm wood. We didn't plan this, Eli said. We planted it, Ruth answered. Jason looked out at the fields, the rows straight as lines in a poem, the town lights flickering on like a slow applause, the school's rooftop in the distance catching the last light. He thought of the day his backpack hit the floor and the day a helicopter answered his dignity with reinforcement. He thought of how pain became purpose and how a community learned the cost of contempt and the profit of respect. He took a deep breath that tasted like cut grass and second chances. Tomorrow, he said softly, we start over again. We always do, Ruth smiled. Until there's no kid left who needs a helicopter to be heard, Eli added, and the night, satisfied, wrapped them in the kind of quiet that promises morning. Moral. Respect is not charity, it is justice. Never judge a person by the dust on their boots or the place they come from. A door that opens for everyone makes the whole house stronger.